Nearly 50 years after its creation, Microsoft has finally become the most valuable company on the planet. It has a mind-boggling market cap of $3.19 trillion, overthrowing Apple, which stayed at the top for the last 13 years.
Jesus.
Microsoft is a titan of the tech industry, and its influence on—
And you want to know why? Because Microsoft runs a bunch of military contracts with the American government and probably other military countries as well. Or military conglomerates of different countries, because they have to run their software on some shit. So that's how they make all their money.
The world is undeniable. But what if I told you that a little over a decade ago, this tech behemoth nearly crumbled under the weight of its own ambition? There was a time when a single update, an operating system meant to revolutionize user experience.
When they came out with this, I was in school and I remember coming home one day and turning my computer on and there was a forced update or something. And this came out, I was like, dude, this is so ass. I was a kid, man. I was like, dude, what the hell is this shit? This looks like a fucking iPad baby threw up on my fucking computer.
Almost brought Microsoft to its knees. The culprit is the infamous Windows 8 operating system, which has gone down in history as one of the most hated operating systems of all time. It managed to shatter expectations, leaving everyone, including Microsoft,
even normal people hated this update, man. Normies, man. Vista does not even come close to Windows 8, man. Vista changed everything a little bit and people didn't like it. Windows 8, they just went with the whole, oh, we need to make it configure and look like an iPad with like a bunch of fancy buttons and shit.
Embarrassed. With all the hate and disappointment surrounding it, it's almost a miracle Microsoft was able to recover, let alone reach the current success. But before we delve into the catastrophe that was Windows 8 and its everlasting consequences, it's important to take a step back and explore the events that led up to its release. Before the abomination of Windows 8, Microsoft had a massive success with Windows 7.
Windows 7 was peak, man. I loved Windows 7, dude. It was awesome. Loved the interface. It was casual. It was like an updated, like, I don't know how to explain it. It was just good. It was just good. Life was good, man.
And when I say massive, I really mean it. This is going to make you feel old, but prior to its launch...
XP? Okay, it was an updated version of XP. Yeah, you're right. XP was better. It was more... I don't know. It was like user-friendly. I don't know how to explain it. I could operate it as a kid. Windows 7 was just an upgrade, and then Windows 8, they just like fucking threw everything out the window and just like took a shit on it.
Windows 7 surpassed Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows as the biggest grossing pre-order product of all time, which is a crazy comparison because one's an operating system and one's a very famous book, as well as pre-ordering an operating system in the first place. But it just goes to show how successful it was. So in just 3 years, Microsoft had sold over 630 million copies of Windows 7, making
that is a lot of money, chat.
It the fastest selling operating system in the company's history.
We should make our own software, chat.
There was even a time when 7 new copies of Windows 7 were being sold every second. And it's easy to see the reasons behind this explosive success. For starters, Windows 7 came right after Windows Vista, which, let's not forget, was another disaster almost on par with Windows 8. Vista was slow, clunky, and overall a nightmare to use. It also had extremely high system requirements.
My parents both skipped Vista. They just kept XP. Yeah, they did not get Vista.
At the time of its release, which made it unpopular even among enthusiasts.
Vista will and should continue to go down in history as the worst Windows launch ever.
The typical Windows Vista experience back then was to boot it up, look at it, realize it's a nightmare, and then downgrade to Windows XP within hours. It was actually so badly received that many people stayed on XP for a long time and almost refused to upgrade to Windows 7 just in case it was as bad as Vista.
Yeah, I remember that too. I remember my brother talking, but he's like, I don't know if I want to use Windows 7, man. I don't know, man. But it's it actually didn't turn out to be that bad. Windows 7 wasn't bad.
After a long enough period of time with people saying, actually Windows 7's good, they did swap, and the reasons were pretty simple. It's what people wanted. It didn't have massive performance issues on pretty much all computers. It was also stable and rarely crashed during day-to-day uses. And one of the most important factors was that the UI was easy to understand and consistent throughout.
Even for little kids, man. It was great, man. This is such a nostalgic throwback, man.
Why was this important? Well, of course, a lot of computers are being used by businesses, and they don't want to spend more time training employees to use the new system. Because of this, Windows 7 found its way onto 50% of enterprise computers by July of 2012.
I had to teach my mom everything. Like, my dad didn't have time to teach her how to, like, use a computer. I was basically kind of, like, thrown into like being a parent to my mom and teach her how to use a computer. She was so slow at using a keyboard too, man. But this helped a lot, for sure. The user interface.
Sound crazy considering Windows 7 came out in October of 2009. But most people will know if you work at a company, often the software that they use is years, even decades out of date. Because they refuse to upgrade and learn new things and train people new things. The fact 7 took on 50% within 3 years was pretty damn impressive.
Don't they still use some old ass software in the American government, man? Yeah, they still like maintain like a certain OS because they don't want to upgrade. and Microsoft is like, please, can you start using... Sadly, most restaurants run XP. Dude, that is so powerful, man.
And of course, while we can look at the raw data of sales, Windows 7 had another thing going for it. To give you an idea of just how beloved Windows 7 still is, in 2024, Windows 7 has more than 4 times the market share of Windows 8 and 8.1 combined.
It's so bad!
There's still people posting on social media like this. I still firmly believe that Windows 7 is the last good operating system from Microsoft. So to say the folks at Microsoft were confident in their software products after the success of Windows 7 would be an understatement. Sadly, their overconfidence led them to creating an operating system that, as one Redditor put it, solved a problem that did not exist. However, of course, things are...
Oh, I'm gonna throw up. Oh my god. Oh, I'm getting flashbacks to, like, having the new operating system on my parents' computer and my mom, like, going, like, why did they change it? I just learned how to use the other one! Imagine she said that in Russian. She'd be like, oh my god! Why? I just learned how to use the other one. What is this shit? Why is there buttons everywhere? I don't get it. My brain hurts. Is your mom Toad? I mean, kind of.
Complicated, and pinning all the mess of Windows 8 on Microsoft's arrogance would be unfair. Unfair, just like facing the blue screen of death after enduring Windows 8's crappy UI.
Oh.
But jokes aside, we look outward, away from personal computers and laptops and into the world of portable computing. You see...
Yeah, they just basically wanted to, like, sorry, my brain's farting. They wanted to compete with the iPads they were releasing from Apple, basically. A copy of Apple. No. Apple did not have this kind of UI on their computers, man. They did not have this kind of operating system. They wanted something to compete with the iPad shit. And the terrible Windows Phone, which was basically kind of trying to emulate, like, iPhones and iPads.
Up until 2007, the world of computing was divided into 2 main camps, computers and phones.
Yeah.
And there was practically zero overlap between the two. A phone couldn't replace a computer, and a computer couldn't fulfill the need for a pocket-friendly phone. Then, in 2007, this happened.
An iPod.
An iPad.
A phone.
Yep.
And an internet communicator. And we are calling it iPhone.
The world was greeted by the iPhone, a revolutionary device that shattered the status quo and proved the viability of touch controls for tasks like browsing.
God damn, man. I was just a teeny weeny little fucking kid. I remember one of the rich kids came to school with an iPhone. And everybody was like, wow. And they had like not Fruit Ninja. Was it Fruit Ninja? They had like, they had all sorts of games on their phones, and their mom like let them have it. It's like, whoa. It's like, so good. It was crazy how revolutionary that was for like little kids, man.
The web, tasks that were the sole domain of
That Temple
computers
Run.
until that point. It was a paradigm shift that left the tech world reeling in awe. And of course, it didn't end there, because a year after the first iPhone, Android phones started taking market share away from computers as well. And then in 2010, the iPad created a whole...
iPad was massive too. They tried to... So this is like another cringe thing that they did a long time ago, because my mom was a teacher and they forced them to use iPads for teaching even if they didn't want to. It was basically like DEI, but for iPads. You have to use the iPad for like 10% of your lesson. And my mom came to me in tears because she didn't understand how to operate a fucking iPad. And my mom was like crying. She's like, I don't know what to do. And I was like, yeah. And my mom's a really good teacher, by the way. She was really, really good before she stopped. But they forced them to fucking use iPads because they were like, oh, we need to revolutionize the teaching environment. It's like, oh, man.
Whole new market of personal computing.
They're so mean.
Not only was this new market growing rapidly, but there was also speculation that the touchscreen tablet would soon replace most traditional keyboard and mouse computers. We now know that this did not happen, but back then it was a legit fear for companies based around computing. So it's no surprise Microsoft wanted a piece of the touchscreen market pie, or else...
I think they tried to like go way ahead into the future without realizing that you can't force a customer to like something without them trying it out and seeing if they like it. Like the iPhone thing probably got tested for so many years and they had so much Q&A. Like the iPad was easy to use. It was like really dumbed down. It had like basic like neat features that a little computer could do. Like it wasn't amazing by any means, but it was revolutionary at the time. You can with a gun. The Microsoft phone it has a little mini gun pointed at your head when you like use it.
Risk sinking into obscurity.
Dude.
It's always the same. New thing comes out, big companies see it, their shareholders ask, why are you not doing that? Does this risk the company's future? And then they start doing it as well. A recent example would be the metaverse. All the big tech companies wanted to be...
That's another thing. That's a really good example.
In the metaverse. Not because they necessarily thought it's guaranteed to be the future, but because if it was and they were left behind, that could be the end of their company, no matter how successful they were before. So by the time these touch devices became popular, Windows 7 was already mostly complete. So Microsoft shifted their plans for touch compatibility to the next operating system, and that's where the downfall of Windows 8 truly began.
Oh, I remember in school they got Windows 8 and they got one of those touch computers and the thing didn't even work properly. One of those touch screens. Like, you know how you have a monitor and it's a touchscreen monitor? And I remember they told them not to get it because it was like new and they didn't know how to fix it, and they just didn't work. And I remember my teachers talking about it and they said they hate it because they don't know how to use it and stuff. Oh my gosh.
Microsoft's chief executive at the time, Steve Ballmer, talked about the company's vision behind Windows 8 during their CES 2011 keynote.
Support for System on a Chip means that Windows will be everywhere on every kind of device without compromise. All the performance and flexibility of Windows on low power, long-lasting devices. We're entering a new era of technology for consumers, where you'll be able to use Windows anywhere you go, from the small screen to the big screen.
Put simply, the folks at Microsoft wanted to bridge the gap between traditional desktop computing and low-powered touch-based devices. Their plan was simple: make Windows users stay on Windows no matter the type of device they used, whether it was a computer, a tablet, or even a phone. In fact, if you followed the console war in modern times, you would see that this mantra has remained the same. Because they decided one day, instead of competing with Sony over who has the best console, they'd instead make all of their games available on PC and Xbox at the same time.
Smart.
Not enforcing console exclusivity, and just trying to get as many people on a Windows device as possible, which is where
That was such a big deal too. Having that shit is so smart on their part. Like, I know, hate Xbox, hate blah blah blah, but like, this was a really smart thing to do.
the birth of Game Pass comes from. What Microsoft really
Xbox
cares about
is a
and what has
PC,
made
yeah.
them this successful is that no matter what
Windows.
you're doing, it involves Microsoft. So keeping this in mind, in 2010 they were already experimenting with this idea when they released the Windows Phone 7, which ran Windows CE, a portable version of Windows that was extremely limited compared to the full operating system. So building upon
ugly.
this, the next
I still don't think if they released this in 2024, I still think this UI is horrendous. Genuinely. I just think from like an aesthetic perspective, it's disgusting. I don't think they thought this through at all. They just wanted to get ahead of the competition and then develop it as they go.
plan was to create a Windows OS that worked the same on all devices. And I have to admit, the idea of it does sound extremely cool and futuristic, even today. To achieve this vision, Microsoft made some critical changes to its OS, the most notable of which was
Oh my god, I remember the touch password shit. That's crazy. Oh my god, you touch the screen in a certain way and it unlocks it? Ugh.
the brand new full screen start menu that was much easier to use on a touchscreen.
And it was
They also added a bunch
laggy.
of touch-friendly features such as the live tiles and charm bar, which did later become some of the most hated parts of the OS. Alongside these touchscreen focused additions, Microsoft also overhauled the entire window look with a new theme called the Metro UI. This minimalist design, centered around the company's newly commissioned logo, was a departure from the traditional Windows aesthetic.
Yeah, and it just looks ugly. They used to just have like a Windows with the four colors, and now it's just like it's a blue square. I hate it when they minimalize like well-known logos. That's one of the things I hate, man. Yeah, minimalism.
So it's clear Microsoft was coming out all guns blazing. So much so, they hired Paula Scher, arguably one of the greatest graphic designers of our generation, to craft their new Metro UI. For context, Paula is the design mastermind behind the refined identity of Citibank, Shake Shack, and the Public Theater in New York City. So as the development of
What has that got to do with computers, though? What has that got to do with computers, man?
Windows 8 was coming to a close, the hype surrounding its launch was growing.
I look. If you make like nice logos and stuff, it doesn't translate into like you being a good, intuitive, like UI designer. Like it doesn't translate automatically, man.
Day by day. Not that there weren't skeptics, because there always are, but with the fantastic success of Windows 7, most people had forgotten about the disaster of Windows Vista.
Balder.
After all, they had the formula perfected. They knew exactly what people wanted. The slam dunk success of Windows 7 was so fresh in memory. How could anything go wrong? Of course, you know where this is going. In September of 2011, Microsoft released the first preview build of the upcoming OS. Opinions on this were mixed. While some liked the direction Windows was headed, others not so much. When asked about the preview build on Windows Forum, a user succinctly replied, "It sucks. Let's hope it gets better fast."
That's what I think, that they thought they would shove this out and because they'd get ahead of the market. You can't go and get ahead of the future of your audience. You have to slowly lean into like upgrades and ideas. That's why the metaverse sucked. That's why this fucking sucked. Like, there's a lot of examples of companies thinking they can get ahead of the customer, and you can't do that. Most of the time, you just fucking can't. You can. Apple did. I'm pretty sure they started development of iPhones, iPods, and iPads in fucking 2000, man. Do you know how long it took them to develop this shit? The space between the time between Windows 7 and 8 is not that far apart. Apple took years to develop that shit. They developed a new UI. They wanted to be intuitive. They needed to test it. They needed to see if they could, like, if people liked it or not. This came out between Windows 7 and Windows 8, and people tested it and they said they didn't like it. They should have not released it, period.
But even with those mixed reviews, the preview build was downloaded over 535,000 times in less than 12 hours.
That's a lot.
The hype was real, and it continued right up until the release on October 26th, when the full version of Windows 8 came to the public.
The tech giant launched its newest operating system, Windows 8, in New York today. And Ballmer says it's the biggest change the system has seen in 17 years. Personal computers and tablets with the operating system built in will go on sale tomorrow, Friday.
What followed was one of the most brutal beatdowns by critics in tech history. I'm serious. I already knew.
Oh, that's another thing. They released tablets with the UI. Hold on, I want to check something. Oh, Windows 7, 8, Windows 9, Windows 8, 2012. That's 3 years. Yeah. And how long did it take for them to make the iPhone and all that? I think like 3 or 4 years. I don't know. I just feel like they overstepped their boundaries, man. Yeah, I don't know.
Knew that the reviews of Windows 8 were negative, but
yeah, they wanted to make it all the same.
Looking into this, it was savage. For instance, everybody's favorite person from PC gaming, Mr. Gabe Newell himself, the founder of Valve and Steam, called Windows 8 a catastrophe for everyone in the PC space.
Based!
When a sentence like that comes from Gabe Newell, you know things are bad. Some other publications didn't mince their words, even though they had few. One such publication simply said, fail. My favourite, though, is Beta News, who compared this OS to a bad blind date due to the amount of hype it had going into the launch, contrasted with how badly it turned out to be. And it wasn't just smug critics either, posting online their opinions like they always do. The general user base of Windows was also quite unhappy with the new version. If we were to try and sum up the overall sentiment the public had about Windows 8, we'd probably just use this clip.
And personally, I think it's bad enough that it warrants a product recall. I mean, it's that defective.
Honestly, I would not. I kind of agree with him. I really do. I have a very specific memory that they. Tell me if I'm wrong. This was a long time ago, but I'm pretty sure they rolled out an update where you can disable this fucking dog shit UI that you launch with. Like, you can kind of launch it where you don't have to see this bullshit on your screen. It was an 8.1. Yeah, okay. I'm remembering correctly. See, it was a long time ago, and I was a kid. I don't really remember. And I remember that I thought to myself, like, oh God, I please let them roll out something or, like, change it, because I can't do this, man. This is so ass.
How did this
still dog shit? No, I agree, but still, at least it was something.
How did it get released? Who signed off on this? Because honestly, they should be so horribly fired. Their employee ID card should be hung on pikes outside of Microsoft's Redmond HQ as a reminder to anyone else who perpetrates such stupidity.
But obviously it wasn't all bad, because if you know anything about the internet, somebody somewhere is going to like it. And we have to look no further than this guy on Reddit who drew the operating system as cute anime girls.
Yeah, but I mean, you can make cute anime girls and make anything look cute, man. Come on.
So obviously he very much liked Windows 8, which means it was not a complete failure. That being said, this positive reception
Windows 8
was the exception. Most hated it, and for good reason.
Windows should have taken this guy and, like, made it, pushed him to the marketing team. Little Windows 8 Chan.
One such reason is, of course, as we discussed earlier, the UI issues. For example, a YouTuber took his laptop with Windows 8 to the public to see their reactions, and they all found navigating the new UI confusing and annoying.
That was your first time with Windows 8, what do you think?
That's the most confusing Windows I've ever been on so far.
Because it's so different. Like, it's just, I don't know what they were thinking. I feel like they just didn't like run a proper QA or a proper beta. It's not intuitive. You have to, when you make a product that's for everyone, you have to dumb it down so that people who are dumb like me can fucking use it, man. You can't just randomly do this like complete shift.
They
went to tiles. What the frick?
I like the pretty icons that they have on here. That's about it. This is really Windows 8.
This is really Windows 8.
To dive into it a little bit deeper, it was basically highlighting a major flaw in the redesigned UI. It aimed to be equally good for both tablets and desktop PCs, but ended up in the same way you'd expect when going in two opposite directions. They failed at both. Even if you used it enough to eventually understand how to use it, it still felt clunky, unrefined, and needlessly complicated in places. But funnily enough, when looking back, you can find gems like this user review who predicted the future. On July 25th, 2012, months before Windows 8's release, a user posted on the Windows subreddit asking, "Does anyone else hate Metro and everything Windows 8 is trying to
This guy is also, his name is I Hate Apple Shit.
do?"
What?
They further added, "Seriously, this will be a disaster for Microsoft. Windows 8 will fail harder than Vista. Nobody wants Metro. Nobody wants a fucking tablet OS on their goddamn desktop. What the fuck was Microsoft thinking?"
The fact that you couldn't opt out of it, like, first thing before the update was crazy to me.
Very eloquent, if I do say so.
Yeah.
And of course, this turned out to be true. This was the exact problem with Windows 8. There was two horses pulling the product in two different directions, which wouldn't be so bad if you didn't need a whole product for both audiences. And of course, anyone who posts opinions online will discover, as this guy did, being early is the same as being wrong.
True.
This guy nailed it, but at the time he was heavily downvoted and mocked for posting what turned out to be completely true.
This is why you should never take Reddit seriously, man.
One of the classics posted was, "Ever think of doing something productive instead of ranting about an OS that no one is forcing you to use?"
What do you
Which is hilarious considering when Windows 8 released, most people decided, yeah, actually, we won't use it.
Yeah, we're gonna
Obviously,
use
this backlash, if that's what we're going to call it, does echo the hype and confidence in Microsoft that I was talking about earlier. Unfortunately, the reality of Windows 8 was not kind to these loyal fans. And to try and understand the questionable design choices behind this update, let's take a look at the power menu.
This is nostalgia. This is the shit, bros.
Staple of Windows OS and one of the easiest ways to shut down or restart your PC. Since the introduction of the power menu feature in Windows 95, it was a part of the start menu. Now, take a guess at where the power menu was on Windows 8. Yes, I did.
Where was the power menu? Where?
Foreshadow it. Not in the start menu. So after 17 years of people using the Microsoft Windows OS, they decided to move one of the most used features that had no reason to be moved to a completely new location. And the new location is the thing nobody asked for, called the charm bar. And there wasn't a
What? The charm bar?
bouncer asking for your ID to get into the charm bar. Instead, you had to bring your cursor to the upper half of the left corner and then slide it down.
Man.
Which would obviously raise the question, why would you force it into this weird location that people on PC wouldn't want to use? And the answer is pretty obvious, because this was designed, again, for tablet users. And to quote another website, ZDNet, Windows 8 was a design disaster. But
that is actually horrifying. This is what I mean. You can't force an old dog to do new tricks. Like, you have to kind of ease them in, man. Like, what? I know all the people are gonna be, oh my god, skill issue, blah blah blah. But you have to realize that you're catering to the lowest common denominator, man.
it doesn't end there, because alongside the new UI, Windows also redid the Windows logo completely, and I do mean completely.
Yeah.
This, of course, is a little bit of an aside, because
Ugly.
it's not that big of a deal, right? But people do care about logos for these companies and these products that they use in their day-to-day life. And unfortunately for Paula, the person who designed this, she came under fire for what people were calling wonky and too simple, which was the light-hearted criticism because Beta News stated the new...
Let's look, hold on. Windows logo, history. Let's look at the pictures. Like, let's have literally a tertiary glance. Let's see. 2015. Oh, there we go. Nice little picture. Wow. Wow, look at this. Oh. Windows 1. Okay, they're kind of like, they're figuring it out. Ooh, the windows with the colors. I like that. See, it's a little bit different now. It's a little bit slanted, chat. Ooh, slanted. Ah, I like this one too. Yeah, look at this one. It's like, it's a little flag. It's wavy. We like that. This one, I don't understand why they added the circle. I really don't. Windows 9 is a little bit of this and this, and then Windows 8 and Windows 10 is like... Excuse me? Like, why is it, like, different now? We went back to Windows 1! What the frick? Why? Like, what? Why is it a literal window? This one is more simple than this one too. Like, I don't know. It's just a little nitpick of mine. I don't like it when they simplify this shit too much. It's boring.
New logo is a mistake and one Microsoft could and should correct before Windows 8 ships in the autumn. When looking into why people cared so much about the logo, we just have to look at the general public's opinion. Every major...
The lowest common denominator does not like or appreciate change. Like, every big tech logo got worse, like it's a trend with them? Oh, absolutely.
Major release of Windows had kept the iconic four-coloured wave since 1992, and the departure from this very familiar symbol just didn't sit well with many people.
And the colors, too. Like, why did you get rid of the colors? People like that.
After all, you can see this is what people have been using for most of their life. So Microsoft threw away 20 years of an iconic look and replaced it with something that's just boring. It's just not interesting at all. And while this might not seem like a big deal compared to the other changes to the OS, it was a massive deal for long-time Windows loyalists. To them, the logo change was a betrayal, signaling that Microsoft was going in a completely new direction.
A fitting logo. If you rotate it 90 degrees to the left, it looks like Windows 8 is being thrown into the window.
One that those loyal users didn't like. It sounds silly, but you only have to look at how people are with the products they consume. If this didn't exist, we wouldn't have a console war, we wouldn't have PC master race, we wouldn't have these people who were really diehard about their brands. So with all this outrage, it culminated in tons of negative press surrounding the new release, which in turn hit Microsoft where it hurt the most: sales. In the first week after its launch, only 4 million copies of Windows 8 were sold. I know I'm saying only, but for Microsoft standard, this was really bad. According to CNET, it was well below Microsoft's internal projections and was described inside the company as disappointing. Hearing that as a quote is kind of like your dad not being angry at you, just being disappointed instead. You can tell they really expected more from what they'd made.
My day's ruined.
But obviously watching this video, hearing this information, you're going to think, oh, it's all doom and gloom, right? But let me hit you with a crazy twist. The sales of Windows 8 licenses somehow surpassed Windows 7. Now don't get me wrong, Windows 8 sold terribly compared to its predecessor.
How? What?
In the long run, but in the first month, Microsoft sold over 40 million copies of their shiny new OS, which puzzled just about everybody. But then when you get thinking about it, it makes sense, kinda. For one, most product launches, the earliest sales are from enthusiasts, and in Windows 8's case, most of these enthusiasts saw the early reviews and eagerly purchased a new version.
Yeah, sold the new
then
PCs.
Came the general user
and the Windows phones. Does that count? Or the tablets?
Windows 7 and was still on the hype train. They purchased.
Oh, they count tablets too, of course!
Just a new Windows version to try out, and ultimately were disappointed. It wasn't until reviews, word spreading around, and people got it in their hands that the Windows 8 sales slowed down massively, with sales of new Windows devices dropping by 21% compared to the previous year, which is a massive number. This, ironically enough, was not just due to Windows 8, but also PC sales slowing down because people were buying more mobile phones than PCs, which was literally the exact opposite of Microsoft was hoping to achieve with Windows 8. But obviously as time goes on, people just rejected Windows 8, such as HP, who silently started promoting and selling Windows 7 computers again, basically rejecting Microsoft's new offering due to lagging sales and demand from customers. After all, anyone looking to buy a new PC didn't want Windows 8 on it, so these manufacturers started selling Windows 7 on them instead.
I hated this.
But perhaps the biggest blow came from the enterprise sector, which includes massive customers of Microsoft products. If it's not being adopted by businesses, then obviously sales are going to tank real hard. To put it simply, companies didn't want to confuse their employees with the overhaul.
Well, yeah, obviously training them under this new dogshit UI. Like, again, I have personal experience when this happened to our computer. My parents were like, oh, let's just upgrade because it says so and, like, we should do it. They installed Windows 8 and my mom was like, oh my god, what is this? She was like, what? Just freaking out. My dad was like, what the hell? He's like, all right, let's go back. We need to go. Yeah, the tablet UI in a PC, it's like, what? And you don't have a touch screen?
Windows layout or spend hundreds of man hours training them on the new UI. That was going to cost them money for what, you may ask? Putting money in Microsoft's pockets and getting maybe the same performance as before? There was really nothing to be gained by companies adopting Windows 8, especially considering Windows 8 was described as having, quote, disappointing usability for both novice and power users. But obviously, as we wind down, it's normal, right, for new upgrades to have some drawbacks, because there's usually some stuff that makes up for it.
As an IT professional, Windows 8 actually kneecapped you, remove power user tools. I remember in my school, they actually held back Windows 8. After a couple of months, they reverted it. They reverted the upgrade and they downgraded because they didn't want to re-teach everyone and all the technicians and all the teachers to like learn all this new stuff again.
What you miss in column A, maybe you make up for in column B. But unfortunately not for Windows 8. It seemed to just miss the mark completely, as obviously they didn't really know where the mark was. There was no meaningful benefits that would make these downsides worth the trouble, apart from touch-friendly screens, of course, which enterprise users didn't care about, and had no benefit for most PC users, which was most of the sales for Windows 8. I mean, if this update was released in 2024, people would be saying touch-friendly controls, more like Microsoft should touch some grass, so they could understand their users' real needs.
True.
I'm sorry, I don't know why I just said that. Because of this ongoing drama though, shitty reviews, terrible sales, Microsoft's reputation took a real nasty hit. After all, you're only as good as the latest thing you've done. It doesn't matter if people have been using your product for over 20 years, they just care about the thing that they're using now. Any trust you built up through Windows 7 being a great operating system was basically gone. I remember at the time the sentiment was real bad. Even now, if you speak to some old heads, they'll still not upgrade to the new version of Windows for
They don't trust me. You fuck them once and it's over.
years. I think for people who actually used Windows 8, they probably still don't trust what Microsoft's doing with Windows with any new version, even now. Doesn't matter if it's Windows 10, 11, 8.1, they're still going to think of Windows 8, they're still going to think of Windows Vista. And speaking of Windows 8.1, that was obviously Microsoft's attempt at damage control after the disastrous launch. It came
how fast was it?
year after. As
1 year of this garbage? Jesus, man, my time kind of fucking flew past it, huh? 1 year is crazy. I thought it took a couple of months.
A free upgrade with an aim to fix most issues that plagued its predecessor. For instance, they brought back the beloved start menu and made the desktop the main hub again. Which sounds so stupid. We took away this thing that's been a staple for like 2 decades, and then we've had to roll out a big update to give it you back 1 year later. But even still, with Windows 8.1 being an improvement, it just couldn't shake off the legacy of its predecessor. Critics acknowledged the effort, but they were never going to be fully convinced, highlighting that while it was better, it still wasn't.
I really want to see the stocks. I want to see the stocks of when this happened.
Great. It still wasn't Windows 7. And as CNET put it, improved Windows still torn between tablet future and PC past. Which brings us to when Windows 8.1 was sunset, with Windows 10 being their release 2 years later and their second attempt at damage control. They made it so that anyone who had a valid copy of Windows 8 or 8.1 could upgrade to the brand new version for free.
Oh yeah, I remember
Can you
that.
imagine the amount of money Microsoft lost in giving the upgrade for free?
Baltimore left
All in
and
an
stock
effort to win
rebounded.
back its user base and prove to everybody, you know, we are still Microsoft. We are still committed to making the best operating system and having as many of you using it as possible.
I still don't like this. This crap right here, like, it's an eyesore. I still have that shit on my, what is it called? On my start bar. That stuff, like, I don't know how to get rid of it, it's just there.
To making the best operating system and having as many of you using it as possible. This would have cost them hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe more. And you can see the inspiration of Windows 7 that goes into Windows 10, which really puts focus into the age-old phrase, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And in the years following Windows 10's release, it looked like Microsoft had learned from its mistakes. Rollout of new features was slow and methodical, and it also seemed like Microsoft was listening closely to the Windows community.
Good.
After all, we've not had...
This is what you should do as a freaking company. Listen to your freaking customers. I know that customers aren't always right, but like you should at least listen to them to some fucking extent and not just push this shit out.
Anything like Windows 8 since Windows 8. But that doesn't mean
especially
Microsoft aren't
the power
doing things
users
that
that do
people
this all the
are
time.
heavily criticizing. Just as I'm finishing writing this video, Microsoft announced new AI features for Windows 11 that nobody wanted or asked for. These features are essentially AI-powered spyware disguised as something useful.
I could be wrong on that. Maybe it'll be useful eventually, but as of now, it's like a big dumb toddler. And Microsoft just recently announced a new feature for Copilot called Recall. And Recall is basically just spyware. It'll record everything you do on your PC at all times.
And given the backlash I'm seeing, it has the potential to cause another disaster, maybe with shades of the Windows 8 launch. After all, nobody likes having things just shoehorn.
I am so sick of companies using AI to like try and like sell a product to a customer. I'm sick of it, man. This is not 30 years in the future where we have robot butlers wiping our asses and stuff. We're not there yet, man. Stop doing this as a selling point. No one fucking cares. No one asked for this. If once you get to a robot butler that like can cook for you, then whatever. Like, go ahead.
Into their system, things that they don't want, things that they're not going to use, and it's just there. Which is why on days where these things are released, some of the most searched topics on the internet are just how to turn it off, because Microsoft makes it difficult to do, and people immediately will find a solution, post it, and then talk about it. With that being said, hopefully Microsoft continues to learn and they listen to their community on this one, cancelling these plans, or maybe we'll be making another video about Microsoft in the near future. Either way, thanks for watching.
Hey, Copilot, look at this. Screenshot of fucking penis. Hey, Copilot, look at my dick. Clappies. Oh, boy. For the AI screenshotting, when it's a beta, security experts immediately advised against it. It was a massive security risk. It took a week or what? Or a white hacker to breach the screenshots and pull them off from someone's computer. The security experts then said Microsoft shouldn't do it, and they did it anyway. Yeah, I love Microsoft penis! They know better than you do! They know better than the customers. Yep. It's disgusting. Foul creature. Unencrypted pictures. Yeah, you sent a picture of your penis, and yeah. The AI takes it and then screenshots it.